Hey Tyrants, welcome to the crew. I'm Seal Agenda, and this is my Let's Play of Tyranny. We've just finished putting down the rebellion, we had a long chat with Verse, and now we're going to move on to talking to our next companion, Barak. And they kill people around him. Alright, let's have a chat with Barak.
And so, civil war divides the armies of mighty Kairos. The reckoning that comes of this failure will be great indeed. We find ourselves in the darkest times. Brothers and sisters who fought for a similar cause now skewer each other over blighted lands in the favor of distant powers.
What would you have done here?
Backing the disfavored was the only logical choice. Graven Ash is the only Archon worthy of your confidence, and you were wise to recognize as much. Naturally, I would have done the same. Whatever others might say about what happened in Vendrian's Well, you acted from instinct. I can't help but respect that.
Alright, I have some questions for you.
What can I do for you?
I'd like to know more about you. I'm the line your enemies cannot cross. All other details are meaningless, but I suspect you have some thirst for details, so ask away. Did you seek the trade of war, or did it find you? Both, I suppose. I knew fighting was in my blood, and the disfavored offered me a chance to use my skills to bring peace. Otherwise, I'd have wound up some brigand or an enforcer to a crooked merchant. Barak taps his scabbard, looking away in thought. You think Ashen is these to bring peace? That's cute, but it doesn't hold water from where I'm standing, big guy. I've seen them spill as much blood as any chorus gang. You've clearly been too busy sacking villages and stealing crops to notice how a proper army conducts a war. We sow order, not discord. I'm afraid, well, you two are worse than Ash in the voices. Drawing himself up, Barak glances at you with distaste. Speaking ill of the great general is not wise while I'm in earshot, Fatebinder. Hey, the boss has a point. Trading jabs is fun, but it's not going to get us anywhere. Bruce chuckles and shakes her head. May I continue my story, or do you plan on interrupting again? Barak waits until Verse makes a rude, dismissive wave before continuing. The disfavored needed recruits in anticipation of the march south. They offered to care for my mother and brother as long as I stayed with the Legion, which is a better guarantee than you'll find anywhere else. I was an elite fighter as far as most were concerned, though still green by disfavored standards. Luckily for everyone, my skills improved under the Iron Marshal's rigorous training. What's the deal with your name? Barak is a shortening of my northern surname, which has been passed down through the generations since Graven Ash assembled his army. I go by it because I wear it with pride. The proper form is Barakonan. Beyond its age and association with the General's Legion, the name of Barakonan has no great titles or associations. I hold no claim to a great house or legacy, save for the disfavored. They are all the kin I need. What happened with your armor?
It is a symbol of Kairos' will, one that I am not likely to forget. I found this armor. Perhaps it would be better to say that it found me during the Edict of Storms.
What happened? When we heard that Kairos would proclaim the edict, we rushed into the field to battle the forces of Stalwart. I was shoulder to shoulder with some of the Legion's most decorated veterans, and my pride blinded me to the danger. Our march was a hasty one. A cohort of disfavored soldiers vanished in the second year of the war, among them the daughter of Graven Ash. After a long silence, we learned that she was held in the fortress of Sentinel Stand. Go on. As we surrounded the citadel, I heard the opening peals of thunder, as did the scout I was busy trying to kill. Then the winds hit like an avalanche. Many of us begged Kairos for deliverance, but what else were we to do? The winds knocked the legs of our offensive out from under us. All the decorated soldiers I brought to the battle were swept up and dashed to pieces, their armor and bodies mixing with the dirt of a tornado that spun in maddening revolutions. Damn thing chooses this moment to go dry, and with so few survivors to recount the edict. Bah! Lentry shakes his quill and presses it harder against a scrap of parchment, imploring it to write. A piece of the citadel wall broke off and nearly crushed my skull. I only remember a few scattered moments from the storm, like the flying bits of bronze and iron cutting my flesh, the severed limbs of fallen soldiers tumbling through the air. Eventually I woke up, thinking myself trapped under rubble. When I rose and felt like I was buckling under my own weight, that's when I realized I was stuck, right and truly stuck, inside this heap of scrap. What happened to Ash's daughter when the edict hit? She was trapped behind the walls of Sentinel Stand, imprisoned by Kairos' storm as well as the fortress itself. 1,000 soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder could not have endured those winds to rescue her. How did you survive? That is a mystery to me as well. Did Kairos hear my plea for mercy? Did this heap of scrap metal protect me? Imprison me? Punish me? He rubs the back of his helmet with his gauntlet hand. A pantomime of a gesture his armor prohibits. I don't have enough fingers or toes to count the possible reasons, so I try to not dwell on them. You're fully stuck in there, huh? Haven't tried taking it off? I made attempts in the past. Even had one of the beast haulers pull on the helmet while another pulled on my boots. The men in the phalanx have taken great pleasure in trying to find ways to liberate me. In time I grew weary of the struggle. Sometimes I fear that removing the armor would be to question Kairos' judgment and risk a more odious curse. It does look like solid protection. Oh, that would be an understatement. If only it protected me from foolish questions. Barak regards you in such a way that you can tell he's rolling his eyes. A forlorn sigh escapes his helmet. You handle your own repairs? I try to keep the surface oiled to slow the spreading rust, and I bend the plates from time to time. But repairs? Maintenance? No. If you have any ideas of how to better maintain this situation, I am open to discussing them. Alright. I assume you grew up in the Northern Empire? That's right. I grew up in Battle's Rest, then trained at Fort Resolution before they marched me out to support the 2nd Cohort. I hope to spend my rusting years in Fretton shores, unless of course I die in glorious battle, which would be preferable. My mother is good with the soil, my father with rings. He spends much of his time away on one merchant's errand or another. Still, I'm lucky to say they're both alive. Lucky, but not always proud. When this war is over, I will have some very direct words with my father about his habits abroad. How many half-sisters do you reckon you have, Barak? 4 brothers. Tell me about the disfavored, then. We are the Iron Legion, the warrior elite of Kairos' fighting force. I could easily lose count of the hours extolling our glories. What is it you'd like to know? You fight in any big battles? I served in Stalwart for the better part of a year. Faced the enemy everywhere from Coral Run to Sentinel Stand. I lost count of the battles. Seems like we fought every other day. A sigh echoes in the cavern of his helm. Some of our best victories took place there, fighting an enemy worthy of our iron. But we were not successful enough to please the Overlord, and the final intervention was harsh on us all. Barak takes in a deep breath, his arms folding as his posture stiffens. I had an unusual view of the Edict of Storms. Kairos' judgment left its mark on me. Yet considering how we fought at Stalwart, with the skill and honor of legend, only the Edict is remembered. A shame. Tell me about Graven Ash. Graven Ash is the general of the disfavored, veteran of centuries of battle and an Archon without peer. I would follow him to the void and back without question. Barak swings his arm in salute. How did he come to serve Kairos? Before the uniting of the Northern Empire, Graven Ash served as a warlord in the service of one of the local kings that defied Kairos' rule. Incredible as it may seem, Ash stood against Kairos' rule. Though his army was dismantled by Kairos' overwhelming numbers, Ash's forces performed admirably. It was said he and his troops claimed 70 and 7 lives for each of their own. Kairos took an interest in the military genius that bloodies his army. Graven Ash was summoned to a conclave of Archons, and though he was sent in chains, he left as an Archon, having been granted a position of power in Kairos' great host of war. Thus the disfavored were born. All of us today trace our line back to those warriors that impressed Kairos with their will and tenacity. The only difference is now we fight on the winning side. Though the general seldom speaks of it, I know that Ash humbled himself in order to spare his troops the brunt of Kairos' punishment. His loyalty to the old blood of the North is beyond question. Well, he made the right choice to save his troops. And he would make it again to save any of us. There has never been a more devoted and attentive leader. Barak makes a proud fist and steps to a salute with the forceful clatter of pots and pans. What else you know of his past? From how I hear the story, the Voices of Nerot was the Archon tasked with conquering Graven Ash's homelands. So it was the Voices' disorganized mob that Ash shamed, and the Mad Archon has loathed Graven Ash ever since. I'm sure that Ash and the Voices have numerous reasons to dislike each other, but I've heard several veterans tell it that the Voices' resentment goes back a long time. What kind of magic does he wield as an Archon? Ash works his magic through us, his soldiers. When we do battle, Ash seems to know the events even before our runners have given word. More importantly, though, he protects us. It's a bit tricky to explain unless you've experienced it. I can think of countless times I've been struck by a spear or hit with an axe and even run through with an arrow. And in each of those moments, the pain and injury just ceased to be. None of us know how he does it, or how he can sense that we're in danger and intervene from afar, but I suppose that's why he's an Archon. What he does probably wouldn't make sense to someone like me. How do you feel about him? How do I feel about him? Archon Ash is the bravest, warmest, most compassionate general who ever lived. He's a living icon of leadership and courage. Barak tilts his head slightly to the side, as far as the suit's limited range of motion permits. Ash is a soldier, but he doesn't kill for sport. A leader, but he doesn't issue commands to hear himself talk. He demands discipline and sober conduct of his troops, and I applaud such standards. All right. What can you tell me of your time in the Legion? I joined the Legion 3 years before the conquest of the Tiers began. Though handy with a few weapons, my size made me the perfect addition to a phalanx. I've served with the Stone Shields ever since. Proud to say I've stood front row, right corner in over a dozen battles. That has been in my place ever since the Iron Marshal gave me the assignment. The Bastard City, the Gates of Judgment, Vendrian Pass, Ocon's Ring, a quick tour in Barris in Chains, and then Stalwart. I spent a long time in Stalwart. Lost a lot of friends there. What are the other disfavored lieutenants? They're Graven Ash's most trusted officers and warriors from the Iron Guard. Between Ash's arcane powers of command and his cadre of skilled, gifted leaders, there is little confusion or chaos in the ranks. What about the one they just call the Iron Marshal? She takes it upon herself to train and harden our greener recruits. Not only that, she has a keen eye for talent and how to foster it for leadership. She's the youngest member of the Iron Guard. Her family line served the disfavored back before Ash bowed to Kairos. Say what you will of how many seasons she's weathered, her lineage is impressive beyond measure. What about Radix, Cairn's disciple? An Earthshaker who swore service to Cairn a few years before the conquest. Since Cairn is gone, the cult now follows Radix. Unlike his Archon, at least he knows how to follow orders. I heard Cairn was unpredictable even by Archon standards. He'd wandered the lands in isolation, and many of the Earthshakers have patterned their studies off of his example. Guess you gotta be careful who you pick as your guiding standard. To his credit, Radix seems to appreciate the honor of fighting alongside the disfavored. Cairn was always peeved to be invited in the glory. The mages seem a necessary complication. They are insubordinate and can't lug their own supplies, but I would not want to go to war without their spells of tremor and leaping stones. What about the Scoutmaster Merrick? Merrick is a devoted leader, and Ash seems to hold his counsel in high regard. Both set their troops ahead of themselves, which I'm sure is why they work so well together. He's no magician, but he does share a special connection to his war band, and they're entrusted with the most important scouting assignments. They say he can see what his scouts see, hear what they hear. What about the veteran Varimas? He is the finest of us, second only to Ash. Varimas is an Evocatus, a soldier who lived to see the end of his term of service. It's rare for anyone to survive that long, much less willingly return. These days he lends his technical expertise to Graven Ash, though by all rights he should be enjoying his twilight years in a seat of honor and dignity. Why didn't the Legion prevent the uprising here? I think that's a question you ought to ask of the Scarlet Chorus. They too were charged with ensuring the locals remained vanquished and unarmed. Barak lurches forward as he speaks, iron plates grinding under his motion. Well, the only really guilty party are the Vendrian Guard. It was their rebellion, after all. That is a supposition unworthy of you, Fatebinder. The Tiers are but children before Kairos. We don't blame them for their ignorance, but the responsibility to set them straight is ours alone. What else can you tell me about the Legion? The disfavored accept only the finest warriors. We are all volunteers and soldiers by trade, not farmers and fishmongers pressed into service. There is a century of tradition, honor, and technical mastery in our ranks. We don't let just anyone into the Legion. Only Northmen of character and prowess are welcome. What if a capable Tiersman wanted to join? We would not recruit even a champion of the Tiersmen. Each soldier in the Legion is tied by blood and fealty to those that stood with Graven Ash during the coming of Kairos. That is part of who we are, and that will never change. That is the worst part about them. That's unhelpful to them, honestly. So, why are they called the Disfavored? It is a name born in shame, now worn in honor. After Graven Ash stood against Kairos, he was forced to give up much. His allegiance, his pride, and the name of his vaunted army. What was it called before? The name has been forgotten by all save Ash and Kairos, and it's considered bad form to bring up the topic. Since you didn't know any better, I'll say this much. Disfavored is the only name by which one needs to know us. Alright. I have some questions about the Scarlet Chorus, then. The allies that were supposed to help us conquer the Tiers? Common criminals, every last one of them. What would you like to know? What do you know about the voices? The Archon of Secrets? All I know are rumors, hearsay, speculation, but that's as much as anyone knows of the voices. Some accounts tell that he's actually dead, and the Overlord has trapped the minds of his foes in the same body to torture them all. As likely an explanation as any I've heard. In truth, I know little of the voices, and I have reason to suspect almost anything about him could be true. You could tell me his tears turned cheese back into milk, and it would seem more sensible to believe you than not. You know anything about his powers? I'm no scholar of sorcery, but as I understand it, the voices of Narat is a thief of minds. They say he can swipe your thoughts and make them his own. I don't know how it works. When I'm recruited into the disfavored, the Iron Marshal told me never to take an audience with the voices if I didn't have a witness on hand. You think him disloyal? Yes, almost without question. You were there at the uprising of Vendrian's Well. The Scarlet Chorus seemed intent on delaying the disfavored war efforts, no doubt hoping to keep us outside the well and in the maw of Kairos' edict. I heard his tears can turn cheese into milk. That's very amusing, Fatebinder. When you know of his associate, the Archon Siren. Siren is the Archon of Song and one of the youngest of her rank. She can influence human emotion with her voice alone. The voices may be the conductor of the chorus, but I'd argue Siren is their best weapon. The voices put her talent to good use. He had her singing a song up and down the coast, and the Tearsmen defected to the chorus in droves. What can you tell me of their troops and tactics? Tactics? These are the first I've heard of them. The chorus is more of an irregular mob than a proper army. Still, it's a well-armed mob, and they even have a few proper warriors and magicians in their pitiful excuse for ranks. What do you know of their warriors? Most chorus rats are untrained peasants handed a knife or a pitchfork. It doesn't take much to qualify you for the front lines. One only needs a beating heart, and even then the chorus could make do. Of course, not everyone in the chorus is an infirm child or sickly old crone. Some ex-soldiers and madmen join, and the fighting elite of the chorus form a clique known as the Scarlet Furies. Barak is too dismissive by far, but he's right that most recruits are novices pressed into service. Most will not survive the first few battles. Those who live will have experience to lead, and those who fall can easily be replaced. What sort of magic do they use? The Blood Chanters are the mages who follow the voices of Narot. Like the chorus itself, their order is not steeped in tradition and antiquity, rather built on knowledge stolen from other guilds. The elders of the Blood Chanters are traitors from the school of Wild Wrath. As fickle and dangerous as the fire they worshipped, they were outlawed by every realm and hated by most sane folk. Yeah, that sounds about right. So when the voices of Narot offered them an alliance, many of the Wrath mages accepted the offer to set fire to the Tears. Their fire magic earns them a place on the battlefield, but they also have chants that stir the mind and the heart. The motherless sods have spells that can bolster a man's courage or tap into his fears. The course is a mob. How is it led and supplied? The voices of Narot gives orders to his elite commanders, who in turn send instructions out to the gang captains. But beneath that hierarchy, it is chaos. Whole gangs will break from the larger force and disperse back into their homelands. The chorus is inefficient beyond words, and yet more bodies keep coming in to replace those lost at the mess. Inefficient? Every weakling lost in the battle shuffle is one less burden to those in the choir still dancing to the song of battle. Our ways must be harsh, otherwise the stupid and the soft will inherit the chant. The chorus has a lot of mouths to feed, so the conscripts that can't or won't fight are made to gather food and water. Else, I'm told, they're fed to the pigs, becoming food and water, in a sense. Barak shrugs. A fine contrast to the honor, efficiency, and decency of the disfavored. The Legion demands courage and tenacity, but provides us with good iron and does not leave its soldiers to forage like vultures. How do you think they convinced so many Tearsmen to join? It began with Siren. She had a song that got whole villages marching to her will. And once these peasants killed their neighbors or cousins in service of the voices, it either hardened them into warriors or broke their mind for servitude. Lots of criminals and drifters joined the chorus too. It seems like the scum of the Tears just need the promise of glory and sanctioned debauchery to turn on their neighbors. It's not pretty, and it shouldn't be. The chorus is a forge. All the dirt of the Tears goes in, and the finest bits are refined into weapons. There are many that join the Scarlet Chorus because they wish to join the winning side. It's a shame that such patriots were not born to proper northern stock, too weak or too slight to be disfavored. The Scarlet Chorus is their best freedom from fealty to the younger realms. Not everyone has the fortune of gaining Tunal's favor. Well, better they serve Kairos in some capacity than have them rot in mass graves. They'd be best served lugging grain for the disfavored, but you're certainly correct. Even the lowliest Tearsman deserves the chance to serve, even as fodder for the front lines. Alright, enough about that.
Good. Let's move on to another matter.
What can you tell me of the Tears? Uphill both ways and full of dumb sods. I learned some history and training, and I've been here for a few years, but I'm no expert. What's your assessment of the local forces? There was a time early in the war when I would have feared the younger realms working together. Imagine that, he chuckles. Once I saw the modest scope of their defenses, I knew they would be easily outclassed. They couldn't even rally their best to make a competent stand. Vendrian Guard? They used to be the Queen's Royal Army of Vendrian. I guess defeat inclined them to a shorter name. We crushed them back in 429. I'm proud to say I took part in the decisive battle. You know the rest. A year after we thought them conquered, thousands of Vendrian Oathbreakers murdered the garrison and declared themselves free of the Overlord's rule. Tell me about the Unbroken. The Unbroken Union of Stalwart. May they rot in the decrepitude of their fallen realm. Barak squeezes his gauntlet into a hard fist. Much as it pains me to admit it, in all the realms of the Tiers, the Unbroken have been the only foe worthy to meet the disfavored in battle. The Unbroken value tradition, just as we do. Stalwart has never lost a war on their own soil, a reputation they take quite seriously. It's fortunate that Stalwart has poor relations with all its neighbours. The rest of the Tiers will not come to their aid, so as bravely as they fight, their end is inevitable. What about the Bronze Brotherhood? Mercenaries from the Free Cities. The chorus needed extra muscle, and you can always mint new rings. Hard to believe the Tiersmen turned on each other for mere loops of metal. The Bronze Brotherhood worship the Scourges, yes, those monsters from the old walls. The mercenaries are grown adults that willingly admire a magical abomination. Read into that what you will. That said, it should surprise no one that the Bronze Brotherhood eventually wanted more than just rings and turned on their contract. Kairos now considers them an enemy, which is for the best. The Overlord needs a better class of combatants. Alright.
Go on, Fatebinder.
What do you know about the Younger Realms generally? Before we marched on the Bastard Tier, I recall Graven Ash giving us a speech as we stood assembled at Fort Resolution. He told us that the Younger Realms lacked the sense to make a stand against us. I don't think I need to point out that the average Tiersman is just plainly inferior to the sons and daughters of the North. For every one of ours they kill, we must drag a score and a half bleeding into the soil with us. Didn't help that they're afraid of magic and relied on their battlefield prowess to stage a defense. A regrettably apt observation, Barak. My guild and I were laughed out of Azure, Arden, Stalwart, and Alcon. Each time we offered to fight for the tours, and each time we were told our magic was unwelcome. Yeah, that's pretty suicidally stupid. Alright. What do you know of the Beastmen? They drilled us on Beastmen combat before the invasion, but it did little to prepare us. The local savages are lacking in brains, hygiene, and the ability to arm themselves, yet the prime hunters of their species are formidable. Aside from being rapacious killers, the Beastmen make good haulers and labourers. Once you've killed the half, they won't follow orders. Enough about the Tiers. You seem like a more than capable fighter. I trained with the spear and shield in my youth, but I gave it up the day I earned disfavored iron. I can still throw with some accuracy, but it's a challenge these days. He knocks twice on his helmet. Why? Are you interested in a sparring session? Well, I heard rumor Ash has an unbeatable sword-fighting technique. You flatter the Legion's reputation, but the Archon does make sure we are competent swordsmen. Observe. Well, I don't exactly use one-handed weapons, but it is what it is. Barak takes up a sword and offers several practice jabs, testing its weight and balance. Before you know what to expect, the gleaming iron whips through the air fast enough for a sharp breeze to disturb the air. Barak does this several more times, never showing any sign of exhaustion. What is the job on your mind? Hold on, we're not done here. Let's discuss some immediate concerns. Oh, nope, okay, that takes us back to here. Would you like to discuss removing your armor? He looks at you for a very long time, his expression is unreadable as ever.
Though we are encouraged to couple and mate within the Legion, I don't consider you one of my cohorts. I think I'll decline.
That is not what never mind.
Can we move on? You're making me
I
uncomfortable.
was not propositioning you, Barak. But okay.
The thought has crossed my mind from time to time.
The big guy here is as useless as an empty scabbard without his phalanx.
Hold on, we're not done with Barak. Oh, but he did get a loyalty ability. Iron Storm. Swords and javelins emerge from his armor and fly into a cloud of iron above me and rain down in a storm. That's nice. I gotta use more of these because they're pretty powerful. Okay, hold on.
My Lord Binder, you have something which requires my attention?
Barak salutes as he turns
What
to
can I
greet you.
do for you?
Let's discuss some more immediate concerns. What do you think of our circumstances? The Overlord will not stand for civil war between the Archons. I would like to think that Tunon would broker peace between the two, but there is too much hostility between Graven Ash and the voices of Narot. We are not powerless to help the situation. We can try to find ways to stop the voices of Narot or discredit him in the Overlord's eyes. If the voices were eliminated, the chorus would collapse and the infighting would cease. What do you think about me? The disfavored hold you in high regard. The Legion is weary of letting outsiders bury our refuse, much less fight among our ranks, so take the compliment for what it's worth. Filthy outsider. Okay. Any reservations I have aside, your military record speaks for itself. You're Tunon's Fatebinder, and my opinions on the matter don't come into it one way or another. Right, how about our companions? I am more accustomed to traveling in the company of soldiers, so I'm out of practice judging the worth of civilians and miscreants. If you had anyone particular in mind, I will give them some thought. Alright, what do you think of Lantry? I do not know how many years he has walked the face of Taratus, but he clearly knows more than he claims to. Since he claims to know a great deal indeed, there is no limit to what he could be holding back. Verse? My sister, you mean? She is a reckless, heartless, indecent, and bloodthirsty excuse of a woman who has no business serving under the banner of Kairos. But in spite of that, I am proud of her. She follows her passion in her dreams, she takes from life everything that she feels she deserves and more. I am a soldier, through and through. I never had the strength of her convictions. I served my Archon in the needs of this war, but there is little enough of me outside of this armor. I cannot say the same for Verse. Verse glances towards your discussion and smooths back her hair, acting as if she hasn't listened to a word. Aw. How about Ebb? She is as opinionated and talented as she is vulgar. Much as we can disagree on the reasons behind this war, I have never found a more impressive example of a tearsman. I admit to also finding her quite striking. Whenever she makes a jab at me, or Kairos, or the Legion, in spite of whatever I might say in my defense, I am pleased to have captured her interest. But I would not have her know my thoughts on the matter. She is a southern savage, after all, and I a decorated soldier. No need to overcomplicate our feelings in a time of war. Okay, Barak. We'll see how you feel about that by the end of the game. Alright. I'm still going to talk to Lantry and Ebb, but I'm going to call it there for now, and we'll start the next stream with that. So, for now, thank you all very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. This is Sea Lord Janda, signing off.